As the daughter of one of South Carolina's first families, Angelina Grimke lived in almost unimaginable luxury. In the 1820s, Charleston's aristocracy was one of the wealthiest societies on earth. But Angelina found it almost unbearable. An empire of sin.
The story goes that each of them in the family had their own personal slave behind them when they ate dinner. And if the salt and pepper were next to the person sitting next to you, you didn't ask them to pass it. Your slave got it from his slave and gave it to you. There was nothing that you had to do that there wasn't a slave who took care of it for you.
Did you hear last night?
Hear what?
Really?
Angelina, what are you talking about?
You know, Henry, he whipped John again.
I told you before, dear. That's Henry's business.
Angelina attacked slavery, not in the beginning because she cared about the slaves.
It is Henry's business. You know
She was really concerned about the fate of their white masters.
I ask you to leave him alone.
He's my brother.
Yes, I know.
She believed slavery was a sin and that God would punish people who had slaves.
Mother, it is my duty to bear testimony against...
Angelina, mind your own business.
It is my business, and it's your business too. How can you stand in church every week?
Let it be.
I can't let it be. Have you no Christian feelings?
Yes, Angelina, I have Christian feelings, and you are putting them to the test right now. My soul will be judged by the Lord, and not by you or anyone else.
It is my duty.
It is not your duty, Angelina. I'm glad, I suppose, that you are so diligent about your faith. But leave my soul to me, and Henry's to Henry.
I speak the truth in love.
Enough!
Mother. Mother. Mother, listen to me. Mother!
Angelina's religious search was tortured. She was more or less on her own as she struggled with very deep and troubling issues about herself and her relationship to God.
In the fall of 1829, Grimke resolved to leave Charleston and the pollutions of slavery for an uncertain future in the North.
There's a kind of fearlessness about Angelina Grimke. Women did not strike out, and white women did not strike out on their own in this way, and Southern white women certainly did not. This is disobedience to proper society, to the South, to the church.
Frederick Douglass was alone in a terrifying new world. A few weeks earlier, the 6-year-old had been delivered to his master's home on Maryland's eastern shore to begin his life as a slave. His first experience of slavery would haunt him to his grave.
Aunt Hester went out one night and happened to be absent when the master desired her presence. No words, no tears, no prayers seemed to move his iron heart. The louder she screamed, the harder he whipped. And where the blood ran fastest, there he whipped longest. He would whip to make her scream and whip to make her hush. I dared not venture out till long after it was over. It was the blood-stained gate, the entrance to the hell of slavery.
Frederick Douglass and Angelina Grimke lived at opposite poles of one of the largest slave societies in history. In the late 1820s, there were 2 million men, women, and children living in bondage in the United States. In the 50 years since the Revolution, every northern state had outlawed slavery. It had once seemed likely that it would disappear in the South as well, but no more. The invention of the cotton gin had led to a massive increase in cotton production, making slavery indispensable to both the South and the North.
It's actually quite astounding how deeply entrenched it was in the nation's political and economic life. What is seen as this sort of idiosyncratic, peculiar Southern institution actually had an enormous economic significance in the national economy of the United States.
Slaves were the single largest financial asset in the entire American economy, worth more than all manufacturing, all railroad, steamship lines, and other transportation systems put together. The only thing in the American economy worth more as simply a financial asset was the land itself. And no one really quite knows how to value, North America.
The only voices advocating the abolition of slavery were black. Their frustration was growing, and some of them were becoming more militant. But no one in power was listening. As of yet, no white Americans could imagine turning millions of dollars worth of slaves into millions of black compatriots. But scattered around the country, a few lonely souls were convinced that slavery was a crime against God and man. And in Boston, one of them was coming to understand that God intended he do something about it. William Lloyd Garrison felt that he was destined to do great things, but he had no idea how to get there. In 1828, he was 22 years old, newly arrived in the city from his hometown of Newburyport. Garrison's father, a seaman and a drunk, had abandoned the family when Garrison was 2 years old. Plunged into poverty, Garrison's mother left her children for years on end as she looked for work. But in their time together, she managed to drum a fierce Christian conscience into her son.
William Lloyd Garrison's religious background was not just a background. It was at the core of who he was. It was an indwelling spirit inside of him that constantly thought about making God's will come into being on this earth.
Shortly after arriving in Boston, Garrison happened to meet an itinerant publisher who was raising money for his one-man anti-slavery newspaper. Garrison was horrified by descriptions of the slave pens where men, women, and children were held awaiting shipment further south. And he began to think that ending slavery was the cause that could give meaning to his life.